This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all of the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
Hey, I'm Anthony.
We are back here on a Friday, a football Friday, leading you in to the NFL Wild Card Weekend. Definitely a very exciting time. We have 4 great playoff games. Well, I mean, on paper, I would say one of them really stands out. The other 3 may be a little disappointing.
Right.
But it is the playoffs, which is obviously a great thing. Although the NFL season is winding down, which is unfortunate. We are in the playoffs, which is obviously what we strive for, what we get ready for. So that's great. We'll be talking about those 4 playoff games here in the first segment. Talk a little basketball after that, and then we'll end the show with just some quick trending stories. So first of all, we will start off with the NFL Wild Card Weekend. We'll go just basically in order of when these teams play. So the first game tomorrow, Saturday, about 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern time. The Oakland Raiders will be going in to Houston to take on the Houston Texans. Raiders Connor Cook, his first ever career start as an NFL quarterback coming in this game, the rookie out of Michigan State. And the Houston Texans are going back to Brock Osweiler after Tom Savage was forced to leave the game last week with a concussion. Osweiler came in, didn't do too bad, about 250 yards, a couple of scores. So they are deciding to go back to Osweiler, who they originally had but struggled all season long, back under center for quarterback play for the Houston Texans. For me, Anthony, I feel like Houston's just kind of going to win this game by default. Houston with the number 1 overall defense when it comes to yards, so they're giving up the least amount of yards per game in the NFL. So I think you have the edge there. They're also at home, so you give them the edge there. And as much as I don't want to trust Brock Osweiler,
right,
because literally, I really do believe he is literally the worst starting quarterback in the NFL.
Ooh.
I have to trust him over a guy who's been a third-string quarterback all season long, probably didn't get any reps before the last couple of weeks in practice, and is making his first career start on the road in a playoff game against the best yard per game defense in the NFL. I just have to give Houston the edge there.
So I agree with you on that. By the way, Blake Bortles would like a word with you as far as the worst quarterback.
I would take Blake Bortles over Brock Osweiler. Plus, he doesn't make nearly the money he does, so he's
okay,
helping
fine.
my salary cap.
Yeah, okay, that part's fair, yeah. I have a buddy who's a Jaguars fan, and he hates him so much.
I'm not a fan of Bortles, but I would really take him over Brock Osweiler. I think Brock Osweiler is that bad.
But I agree with you in the sense when you talk about the team as a whole. Like, okay, the quarterbacks aren't the best, obviously with this matchup. But the defense was with Houston still very good without J.J. Watt. And even the team around him, DeAndre Hopkins, has been really good as of late, for the last couple of weeks of the season. And Osweiler, I don't know, maybe this finally kind of shakes him and be like, okay, look, you have to be better. Like, you can't just be what you've been and expect to get away with it. He got benched, now he got brought back, so maybe he's a better quarterback. And like you said, Connor Cook, we have no idea what he'll do in the pros, because in college is one thing, that's fine. You can have fantastic games in college. Jamarcus Russell had great games in college and went to the pros and was terrible. So, yeah, I think you take everything into account, and while there are good pieces around Oakland, there's Amari Cooper, there's Michael Crabtree, there's Khalil Mack on defense, stuff like that. As the quarterback position goes, Carr was the one that basically helped make them into the playoffs for the first time since 2002, and now with him gone, now down to your third-string quarterback, because whatever you want to say, McGloin, at least McGloin had played in a few games, and you had some idea of what he could do. Now you're on your third-string quarterback against, like you said, a really good defense with Jadeveon Clowney, and it's something that in Houston, I'd probably go with you, is think that all these things considered, you just give the nod to Houston.
It's almost a crime to me that one of these two teams has to win this game. And to make things
Right.
even worse is, unless the Dolphins beat the Steelers, which we'll talk about in just a minute, the winner of this game gets to go to New England and take
Right.
on Tom Brady and the Patriots. So if if the Patriots had any easier road to host the AFC Championship game than this, then I don't think it could be possible.
Yeah, you get either Oakland or Houston's quarterback, right? You get either Osweiler or Connor Cook, and if that doesn't work, then you get, if Tannehill's healthy, maybe Tannehill, or you get Matt Moore. Like, the quarterbacks that Brady's going to go against is just, like, it's not fair.
It's literally not fair, but I'll give Houston the edge. I mean, you are agreeing with me.
Yeah.
I think
I wouldn't
what
say
the
by a
game's-
lot, but yeah.
I think what the game comes down to is the team with the least amount of turnovers probably wins the game. I think the team that gets to 20 first probably wins the game, because I really do expect a low-scoring game. Houston's going to try and run the ball. Oakland's going to try and run the ball. Texans' defense is really good. Oakland's not so much. So I'll give the edge to Houston. I think the team that with the least amount of turnovers is going to win the game. But the Raiders, if they have any shot to win this game, they have to really just play super, super conservative, and their defense is going to have to step up. Connor Cook's not going to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 3 scores like Derek Carr might be able to.
Right.
They're going to try and run the ball with Latavius Murray, Washington, Richard, and just try and play stout defense and stop Houston. That's what the game is going to come down to for me.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you on that.
All right, now we'll move over to the other game that is on Saturday. It's on the NFC side. The Detroit Lions will be going in to CenturyLink Field to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle 10-5-1. Detroit limping into the playoffs, having lost their last 3 games at 9-7. I'm going to give the edge to Seattle in this game as well. Best home field advantage in the league. Detroit, like I said, limping into the playoffs, losers of their last 3 in a row. Matthew Stafford, since he dislocated his finger, has not looked like the same quarterback that we've seen all year long when he was leading them from fourth quarter comebacks week in and week out. So I'll give the edge to Seattle, but I don't really have much trust in them. The offensive line is absolutely terrible. They can't run the ball. Their leading rusher this season is Christian Michael, and he's not even on the team anymore because he's on Green Bay after they waived him. So I'll give the edge to Seattle. I just trust Russell Wilson more. Home field advantage. Seattle's coming in healthier than Detroit and just basically on a better run. So I'll give the edge to Seattle. The spread is 8. I think Detroit can probably cover that. I mean, they are 8-0 this year against the spread, which is pretty good. I mean, well, 8-8 against the spread, but when you're looking at this, it's a little different. So I'll give the edge to Seattle in that regard, but I think Detroit will cover the spread, but Seattle's going to win this game.
Yeah, I think I want to go with Detroit, right? Like, I really want to go with Detroit because I think the injury of Earl Thomas has basically made Seattle much less on defense, because I heard people talking about basically what he would do is it's not necessarily that he was just great at, like, figuring out, like, okay, he's going to throw over here and I'm going to go cover this side. Like, it was more a thing where it was like, okay, you take someone like Earl Thomas, who's really smart on defense. You take someone like, Peyton Manning, last year and the year before that, or Ben Roethlisberger, people who knew what they were doing, right? People who knew how to kind of like look the coverage off and be like, okay, I'm going to look to my left, but then I'm going to throw to my right. Earl Thomas did that in reverse, right? Like, he would kind of like start going towards one place, and the quarterback would be like, oh, he's going to go here, and then just immediately reverse it and go back, and that's what he did on that play where he broke his leg. So him not being there, like, you can bring in other safeties who are talented, who know what they're doing, but they don't have that same kind of Ed Reed, Polamalu kind of like way of doing things, right? And I think him being gone, even though you have people like Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman and stuff like that on defense, it's not as cohesive of a thing. And Detroit, at least offensively without Calvin Johnson, they've been pretty good offensively, at least throwing the ball, running the ball. They've been trying to patch it up ever since Amir Abdullah and them went down earlier in the season. But the fact that it's in Seattle, I think, gives it a little bit of an edge to Seattle. So I would go with you there. But after that, I don't have much confidence in Seattle after this week.
No, because more than likely they would probably go in to face the Atlanta Falcons in the Georgia Dome. So questionable there, but I just can't really trust Seattle. They're, like you said, since they've lost Earl Thomas, the defense isn't as good. The offensive line is really bad. They can't run the ball, but I'll give them the edge over the Lions. If the Lions are going to win this game, I think they're going to need a good, solid effort from Matthew Stafford. I don't think they can turn the ball over because the crowd noise is going to be a huge factor. And then I think it comes down to kind of the running game. Zach Zenner has been really good the last couple of weeks since he's taken over since Theo Riddick's been out. That's a big loss for Detroit in my eyes. A good pass catcher out of the backfield, shows good speed. But Zach Zenner has been pretty good for them. A couple of touchdowns, or 3 touchdowns his last couple of games. About 80 yards on average. So if they can run the ball effectively against that front 7 of Seattle, I think the game can become close and go down to the wire. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I do think they cover the spread. 8 just seems a little too high for me. I'll give the edge to Seattle, though.
Yeah.
Now we move on to the Sunday games. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who are coming in red hot, will be hosting the Miami Dolphins, led by Matt Moore. There was some speculation that Ryan Tannehill might be back for this game. He did not practice all week and then was ruled out a couple of days ago. So we'll be Matt Moore under center yet again for the Dolphins, which has not been that bad. He's only lost 1 game. So,
right.
But the Steelers, to me, are definitely the team that I'm looking forward to progress in this game. This is the first time all 3 of the big 3, the 3 Bs,
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, are going to be playing together in a playoff game, which is kind of surprising. You would imagine they would have played together, but it seems like always one of them is injured. So now you have that 3-headed monster in Pittsburgh, all healthy at the right time. They're coming in pretty hot, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll give them the edge. They're at home. Miami's kind of depleted. You remember these 2 teams did play each other earlier in the year. Jay Ajayi ran absolutely wild for over 200 yards against them. But they did have Ryan Tannehill in that game. Also, that game was in Miami, so you have kind of the humidity, change of climate issues. This game's going to be in Pittsburgh, so you got to imagine it's going to be cold. No, the temperature projection is about 20 degrees.
Right.
So I'll give the edge to the Steelers. I think Miami, I just don't really have much confidence in them with the backup QB. Jay Ajayi is probably going to get some yards, but he's not going to run for 200. And the offense of the Steelers is just clicking right now. I think they're going to be the difference.
Yeah, and you talk about with the game they had before with Pittsburgh, they basically knocked Ben out the game, right? Ndamukong Suh and them basically helped, in that aspect. So that kind of made it a little bit more even with the thing. And then Jay Ajayi at 200 yards. So you assume this week without Ryan Tannehill and with a healthy, like you said, Ben Roethlisberger, and with a healthy Le'Veon Bell, healthy Antonio Brown, they're basically going to be firing all cylinders, and the Dolphins are basically going to be relying fully on Jay Ajayi, right? Because at least before, he still had 250 yards passing from Ryan Tannehill in that game. So it was a nice little give and take back and forth. You didn't have to totally give it to Ajayi every time and say, here, run the ball, please bail us out. And now going to this game, it's going to be cold, so that kind of works better for a running game, right, for Le'Veon Bell and Jay Ajayi. But at the same time, Matt Moore, while he's done okay in the time that he's been the quarterback, he got, beaten down pretty bad last week by the Patriots, but to be fair, a lot of people are going to get that against the Patriots. I think with this game over here, you look at what the Steelers have done, right? The Steelers, as far as like a rush defense for the whole season, they haven't necessarily been as great as you would expect, but if you look at the games that they've actually played over the last 6, like take out the Browns game last week, right? Take out that one where nobody played, right? Where Roethlisberger, Brown, and Bell, they were all out. They're basically like, okay, we got everything locked up, just rest.
And yet they still were able to beat the Browns.
And they just still beat the Browns because the Browns.
Their second string was still able to beat the Browns' first string.
That's got to make you feel bad for Cleveland.
It did force them to go to overtime.
Right.
Still.
But if you're Cleveland, you're like, I can't even beat the backups for Pittsburgh. God. But you look at the other games before that, whether it's against Baltimore, whether it's against Cincinnati, whether it's against the Giants or the Bills, they never got 70 yards. Like one player had 70 yards or more rushing for the last, I think it's like 6-7 weeks of the season. So towards the end of the year, they'd gotten a lot better. They got a lot better at getting their rush defense kind of all together. So you take that into account, and when the Dolphins are basically going to be fully relying on Jay Ajayi, it doesn't bode well for the Miami Dolphins.
The one thing I will give them perhaps an edge on, maybe for a quarter, maybe a few series, they can really get some momentum, because you mentioned the Steelers starters did rest last week. So you have Big Ben.
Okay, yeah.
So you have Big Ben not playing last week, Le'Veon Bell not playing last week, Antonio Brown. Perhaps maybe a little bit of rust, maybe some bad throws early, take some time to get adjusted back up to game speed. Perhaps they can keep it close for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The spread in this game is 10, which is the biggest spread of the weekend, and I really just can't give 10 points in a playoff game no matter who's under center for the Miami Dolphins. But perhaps there could be a little bit of rust there with the Steelers, and the Dolphins can maybe keep it close, maybe to a low-scoring game. But I got to think the Steelers' offense is going to finally get it going. Le'Veon Bell, he missed 3 games and still was by far the best running back there was. Total yards-wise, I realize David Johnson outbeat him, but by far he was just the best running back all year. Antonio Brown's a difference maker. Ben Roethlisberger has a couple more weapons out there. Eli Rogers, in the slot is a really good receiver who could make some plays for them. So I'll give the edge to the Steelers as well. And then the last game, probably the best game on paper, as I mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the hardest to predict given these two teams' history in the postseason, especially at Lambeau Field. The Green Bay Packers, who are winners of 6 in a row, will be hosting the New York Giants of 11-5. You remember the Giants have won their last 5 postseason road games. Eli Manning is 2-0 in the playoffs against Green Bay at Lambeau Field. They have a defense that's coming in red hot. Their secondary is calling themselves the NYPD now. Kind of like how Seattle has the Legion of Boom. The New York Giants have the NYPD as their secondary. So they're getting a little cocky, little off-field distractions with that, and with the wide receivers going down to party with Biebs and Manziel in Miami without their shirts on. So they have a little bit of distractions there, if that could maybe be a distraction, if it's going to be treated that way. You have Aaron Rodgers, who's coming in red hot. Since they were 4-6 and he guaranteed they would run the table, he's got 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. They are at home. The forecast is projected to be 15 degrees, so vintage Lambeau Field in January, the frozen tundra. Something about this game, I just really don't know. I'm going to go with my gut feeling, and this is unbiased because I am a Packer fan. I swear this is unbiased. But I'm going to go with Green Bay in this game for the simple fact that they're at home, and they have probably the best quarterback in the playoffs right now in Aaron Rodgers, who looks like he is back. He's just on fire. 40 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's able to maneuver around the pocket, so his calf and hamstring injuries he had a few weeks back seem to be cleared up by now. I think I give them the edge in the running game. Perhaps Randall Cobb will be back. He's been practicing the last couple of days, but he does have an ankle injury, so you have to see how much of a factor that will be. But I'll give the edge to Green Bay for the simple fact that they have Aaron Rodgers and the Giants don't.
So this will be the first time you and I disagree, and I'm not even disagreeing because I think it's going to be a really close game, and I understand that Aaron Rodgers over the last 6 weeks of the season has been phenomenal. I just believe that Eli Manning has good luck on his side for no reason whatsoever. For whatever reason, he has 2 Super Bowls that he probably shouldn't have, at least 07 when he shouldn't have because that Patriots team was insane. And like he said, he's beaten the Packers twice in Lambeau. Both of those years that he won, they made it to the Super Bowl because the only time Eli's actually won a playoff game are the 2 years that he went to the playoffs and won the Super Bowl.
And he beat Green Bay at Lambeau Field both those times.
Both those times. And while Green Bay is coming in really hot, and while they're a team that you absolutely have to obviously prepare and everything else like that, because Aaron Rodgers is playing maybe the best he's played, in his entire career for, like I said, those last 6 weeks. The Giants haven't been bad either. They basically figured out how to use Odell Beckham, right? Because in the beginning of the year, he was kind of hit or miss and stuff like that. And I think with the Giants, that defense has been good enough. It's not the defense that they had, in 07 or 2011. But I think they're just good enough. I think that the Giants will make just enough plays. It is in Lambeau Field, but the one thing with that is it's in Lambeau Field, which means it's going to be very, very, very cold, right? That's, we've seen old, video clips of, the Packers back in the 60s or wherever else, always freezing, everything else like that. It's going to be that way, and that doesn't really help Aaron Rodgers with his passing, right? That helps with the running. And outside of a week or 2 with Ty Montgomery, that running situation has been bad for them.
The Green Bay Packers running back wears number 88. I think that literally says it all.
That's not good.
They added Christian Michael. He's been okay. He's still trying to get adjusted to the team a little bit, but the Packers running back literally wears number 88.
That's no good.
But he has added some.
He has had a few good games. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago he had 180 yards, something like that. He, has been good for them this year. I think it's just to rely on him basically to say okay, in the freezing cold, okay, Ty Montgomery, you basically play running back and you get us 150 yards, have fun, do this again. I think that's a lot to ask for him.
I think this game definitely comes down to the wire. I think the team that can maybe make one play late wins the game, whether it be the offense for the Giants, the Packers defense, or vice versa. So I think that is definitely the difference. These 2 teams did play earlier in the season, a Sunday night game. The Packers did win that game, but obviously that means literally nothing now.
Sure.
Because the playoffs is what matters. For me, I just trust Green Bay more. Got to trust Aaron Rodgers more. Eli Manning struggled this year, 26 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, but it seems like when it's playoff time, he magically just flips a switch and becomes the greatest quarterback with the most flukiest, lucky plays we've ever seen.
Right.
So He has Odell Beckham, which is obviously a difference maker, but I think what people are forgetting is Jordy Nelson is, if you look at the stats, pretty similar. Like, look at Odell, 101 catches, Jordy Nelson 97. So Odell has 4 more catches, 1,367 yards compared to 1,257. So 110 more yards. And then Jordy Nelson, 14 touchdowns, Odell 10. So pretty similar years for a guy who's coming off of an ACL injury.
Right.
You got to imagine the complementary pieces around him for Aaron Rodgers are better. Devontae Adams, 12 touchdowns this year, compared to Sterling Shepard and Victor Cruz. Victor Cruz really doesn't even look like he's even a part of this team anymore. And the running game for Green Bay, although it's not spectacular, is just a little better in my eyes. So I think the game definitely comes down to, is the Giants defense, who's been pretty much elite for the last second half of the season, the NYPD, getting a little cocky, are they going to be able to slow down probably the hottest quarterback in the NFL right now? That's going to be the difference to me. And I just have to go with history, and that Aaron Rodgers has gassed everyone he's seen the past 6 weeks. They're coming in hot. The defense is getting healthier, and I got to give them the edge. But it's going to be a close game. This is by far the best game of the weekend in my eyes, on paper. Obviously, things might come down differently. That's why they play the games. But I got to go with Green Bay. Just simply a gut feeling. I just trust Aaron Rodgers more than Eli this year. So we'll take our first break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, we'll talk about the potential of literally Zaza Pechulia being a starter in the All-Star game. We'll talk about that after the break and more at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Last night, the Houston Rockets defeat the Oklahoma City Thunder 118-116. Russell Westbrook, a big game, although in a loss, 49 points. He attempted 15 three-pointers. He did hit 8 of them, but still, anytime you see Russell Westbrook shooting 15 threes, it doesn't really bode well for me. James Harden on the other side yet continues to impress as this distributor role in the Mike D'Antoni offense. 26 points, 12 assists to go along with 8 boards. And for me, it was really important to see that he's becoming a distributor and actually having some trust in his teammates with the final scenario of the game last night, game tied at 116. Obviously, you'd imagine the Rockets have the ball, so you'd imagine that James Harden's probably going to be taking the last shot. But what does he do? With just a couple of seconds left, he drives and dishes to Nene, who gets fouled with 0.7 of a second left, knocks down 2 free throws to give them the edge, obviously. So he's actually having some trust and faith in his teammates, which is something we've literally never seen before. The Rockets 28-9, absolutely hot right now. Mike D'Antoni's having a big-time effect. With Houston, though, they are attempting three-pointers at an all-time historic rate. Do you know that 46% of their shots this year have been threes? It's literally almost every other time down the court, they're shooting a three-pointer.
That's wow.
I knew they shot a three-pointer at 46% of the time.
I knew they shot a lot of threes because they had a game. I think they broke the record for threes in a game against Sacramento. So I knew they shot a lot of threes, but that's a really high number. Good God.
Last night, attempting 39 threes, knocking down 15 of them. I mean, we've seen this with the Warriors. The three-pointer is literally just the absolute difference maker.
Yeah. Well, he basically figured out that it's a lot better to shoot a three-pointer than a really long two. Like it. You know, it's a little farther back, a couple feet back, but if you make it, you get 3 instead of 2. And the people they have on the team, Harden can make threes. Ryan Anderson's like the prototypical stretch 4. Trevor Ariza can do it. Beverly can't. But then you got someone like Eric Gordon who can do it and stuff like that. You got a basically roster full of people who our 3-point guys. And D'Antoni, I mean, he's not shy to do that at all. He did that with Phoenix. He had people like Steve Nash or Sean Marion, people that could shoot threes. So he's just basically took that offense that he had over in Phoenix and the people that he have in Houston, it works for it. So he basically put it over here, and it's working really well.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it works in the playoff. Houston's going to be there. You got to imagine if everyone stays healthy,
right,
they're going to be a top 3 seed in the West. So have to wait and see how that goes. But it's definitely working so far. But I want to get to what came out yesterday. Yesterday, the first sort of updated list of the NBA All-Star voting has come out. Voting is open for fans to vote until January 16th, so 9 more days, including today. So when you look at some of these top names here, when you're looking at the Eastern Conference in the front court, LeBron James obviously leads. No real surprise there, looking to make his 13th consecutive starting appearance for the Eastern Conference. Number 2, a first-timer, Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee.
Nice job.
Having an absolute breakout year, averaging practically 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. In only his 4th year in the league, he's had the buzzer beater a couple nights ago against the Knicks. Mm-hmm. The Greek Freak, as he's being called, is literally... If I'm looking at players under 25 to start a franchise in the NBA, I'm probably picking him.
Yeah.
Like, even over Anthony. Like, this kid's a stud.
He's healthy. Anthony Davis gets hurt a lot. Yeah, exactly.
He's a stud. So 3rd in the front court, Kevin Love. 4th, Joel Embiid, having a great rookie season. Probably going to be the rookie of the year in my eyes if he stays healthy. Mm-hmm. 5th, Carmelo Anthony. 6th, Jimmy Butler. 7, Chris Porzingis. 8, Paul George. Number 9, Hassan Whiteside. Number 10, Jabari Parker. So when you look at the guards for the Eastern side, you have Kyrie Irving, no surprise there, Dwayne Wade, DeMar DeRozan, Isaiah Thomas at number 4, Derrick Rose 5, Kyle Lowry 6, John Wall 7, Jeremy Lin 8, Kemba Walker at 9, and number 10, Avery Bradley from Boston. You look at the guards from the West, Steph Curry is in first place, no real surprise there, James Harden 2nd, Russell Westbrook 3rd, Klay Thompson 4th, Chris Paul, though he is injured, is in at number 5, Damian Lillard from Portland 6th, Eric Gordon from Houston in at 7, Manu Ginobili 8, Iguodala 9, and Zach LaVine from Minnesota 10. But you move to the front court for the Western Conference. Number 1, Kevin Durant. I think we both agree there's no issues there.
Makes sense.
Number 2 is another Golden State Warriors player in the front court. So you're thinking to yourself, oh, okay, probably Draymond Green.
Yeah, that makes sense. He has, he's a really good player. He's been an All-Star before. All right, cool. Give him some love.
Draymond Green is coming in at number 5.
Okay,
so we have another front court player from Golden State in at number 2, not named Kevin Durant and not named Draymond Green. Who is that name? None other than Zaza Pechulia.
Yeah.
Zaza Pechulia coming in 2nd in the first release of NBA All-Star voting for the front court, 2nd in the Western Conference with 439,675 votes. Kevin Durant is first with 541,209 votes. So he's got practically 102,000 votes more than Pechulia. At 3rd, you have Kawhi Leonard from the Spurs.
Makes sense.
No problem there. Kawhi Leonard's having another fantastic year, probably looking at winning another Defensive Player of the Year. One of the best two-way players in the league. I'd probably say 2nd behind LeBron. Two-way player.
Right.
Kawhi Leonard in at 3rd. 341,240 votes. I remind you, Pechulia, 439,675 votes. So he's practically got 100,000 more votes than the 3rd place guy, which is Kawhi Leonard. Zaza Pechulia this year is averaging 5.2 points per game and 5.8 rebounds per game.
All-star.
And is a backup.
All-star.
Can we find a way to eliminate fan voting, period?
No, because
this is the worst. We've seen it in the past.
It's not great.
We've seen it in the past.
Right.
Yao Ming got voted starting center because all the people in China voted for him year in and year out. Mm-hmm. But Yao Ming was a decent player, although he got injured at the tail end of his career. He just got inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right.
We saw Kobe get inducted as a starter every year when he was at the tail end of his career, although he was injured. Tracy McGrady got the same sort of treatment. You could say Dwayne Wade maybe this year. But Zaza Pechulia, this has got to be the worst one of them all.
I mean, at least with Zaza Pechulia, he's been playing. Like, at least you can say that. With Yao Ming, it was just like, oh, we like Yao Ming. Let's put him in here. Zaza at least played 32 games this year. It's not like he's only played like 5 games and got all this. That would be probably the worst. And yeah, Yao was hurt and everything else like that and was never going to play, that, I mean, I don't want to take out fan voting, because I think this is hilarious. You gave people the option. You said, all right, vote for this, see how it goes. Well, you said to do this. And if all you do is make it media and player votes, then it's not as personal, right? Then it all of a sudden becomes a lot less, like, people don't feel like they have any kind of say in it. And with this thing with Zaza Pechulia, I mean, it's one guy. It's a bad thing, but it's one guy. It's not like this all-star starting lineups was JaVale McGee, Zaza Pechulia. I'm trying to think of, like, really bad, like, starters, like Costa Kufas, and, like, the guards, like, you put in somebody like Jason Terry, right? It's not like every single person you voted in was bad. Like, we basically said, like, everything else, okay, Kawhi Leonard, okay, Russell Westbrook, okay, LeBron James, okay, Giannis, like, okay, cool, everything else. It's just one guy that is just, because the Warriors are the Warriors, and they're so hyped up over the last 2 or 3 years, basically you had a bunch of the fans saying, okay, cool, because remember there was something where, I think it was either this year or last year with baseball, they basically tried to get all of the Kansas City Royals to be on the All-Star team. And they came close, but it was one of those things where it's just like you give, a handful of people who have enough time on their hands a goal, they're going to try and get to that goal. And at this point, their goal was to get, apparently, Zaza into the All-Star game, and they're doing a pretty good job, even though this isn't the same as it was last year, where it was basically like, if you got voted in from the fans, you're in. There's kind of more to it now. But, I mean, at this point, this is just kind of funny.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the NBA is doing it a little differently this year because I think they're sort of taking consideration into people like you and I talking about how simply just a fan vote is probably not the best thing. So what they're doing is like 50% of the fan vote is going in, and then the other 50% is getting made up of players' opinions and media members' opinions. So there is a little bit of unbiasedness there. And I do stand corrected. I said that Zaza Pechulia does not start, but he has started all 32 of the games this year for the Warriors. So technically he is their starting center. So congratulations, Zaza. But still, this is a guy who for his entire career is literally averaging 7 points a game and 8 rebounds a game.
All-star.
And this year he's averaging 5 points a game and 5.2 points a game and 5.8 rebounds a game. And yet he is second in the West in front court votes for starters, and it's not even close. He's practically 100,000 votes ahead of Kawhi Leonard. Number 4 is Anthony Davis. Number 5 is Draymond Green. 6, DeMarcus Cousins. Number 7, Karl Anthony Towns. Number 8, LaMarcus Aldridge. Number 9, Blake Griffin. Number 10, Marcus Gasol. All of those names, with the exception of maybe Blake Griffin because he's missed a lot of time.
Right.
I don't have any issue with any of those names. But Pechulia coming in at number 2. There must be some sort of thing going on in Oakland where they're literally like some sort of hashtag like get Zaza to the All-Star game or something.
Probably.
This is a guy who's been in the league 13 years, never even been questioned to be an All-Star, never even deserved to be an All-Star. No disrespect to Pechulia, he's been a decent player. But this is a guy who literally has no business even being mentioned as an All-Star. And yet the NBA and the voting and the fans is probably going to get him into the game because if it's like a 50-50 split, he's going to have so much votes that he's probably going to get in because he's so far ahead of some of these other names on this list. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like this is the worst example we've seen of fan voting, and we've had some really bad ones.
No, I still say Yao Ming's the worst because he didn't even play really that season. But I mean, at
least with Yao Ming, he was actually a very good player when he was healthy.
But he had no chance of playing. Like, it was just basically like, oh, we like Yao Ming, let's put him in. Right? That's all that really was.
This guy doesn't even deserve to be playing.
I mean, no, I mean, you're right about that. I mean, it's the power of the Warriors, man. Like, they're
everyone's favorite team.
You get the whole Bay Area behind them, not just Oakland, not just San Francisco, San Jose. You get the whole Bay Area behind them because really what else basketball team do they have? Sacramento's too far away from them. Los Angeles too far away. They basically have that whole area. And that's a lot of people per square foot, and they're all apparently, and Warrior fans are going to be in other places too. They're going to be in Arizona, New York, Florida, stuff like that. And you get all that going, and now he's an all-star. And the only way I think it would have been funnier is if they would put JaVale McGee as an all-star.
The thing I don't get is, like, say you're just a Warriors fan, you're at the game, there's like an announcement on the speaker, like, oh, in section 118, go pick up your all-star voting to vote in. Like, what would even, like, tempt you to put, Zaza. Like, is that, you know how it's like?
No, you want to know what it is?
Usually it's like you punch out the little hole.
Sure.
He's probably like a write-in candidate. Like, his name probably isn't even on that list.
Well, no, you know what it is? So, either I think it was 2 or 3 years ago with the Atlanta Hawks, it was when they had Jeff Teague and Millsap and Korver, and I can't remember the fourth person right now, but and Horford. They all 4 made it to the All-Star because as a team, Toronto was doing amazing. And I think what happened maybe with this one was, okay, Klay Thompson, All-Star, cool. Steph Curry, All-Star, cool. Kevin Durant, All-Star, got it.
They're trying to get 5 All-Stars.
Draymond Green, cool. And they're just like, well, I mean, we got one more, Zaza, 2. Like, I think they went down the list, and after 4, they were just like, you know what, why don't we make it just an All-Star Warriors team?
I guess that's the one storyline. I guess maybe a little bit of a motive for people to do it, but it's just so silly.
Like they did that with.
I kind of hope that the media and the players finally sort of step in a little bit and make sure that this doesn't happen.
But that's what they did basically. They basically said, "Look, we're not going to make," because they did it. This happened last year. Zaza would be in because you're not making up 100,000 votes this late in the game. Basically, that's what they did because you're not going to basically say the fans have no voice because that's just mean, right? Like I understand. Maybe protect them from themselves, but like also you have to give the fans something, and this is their something, right? You at least have a chance to vote in an All-Star, but it's also okay. You get half. You don't get the whole. No. You get half. You get this little tiny bit, and then if you could basically get too crazy, we take it away from you, which is what they did. They took half of it away from him.
But even though he has so many votes, he might get in anyway. So it's not
right. So the fans basically were like, "Okay, cool. We'll make it sure he definitely gets in."
It's not a guaranteed thing that he's not going to get in.
Right.
So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, as I said, fans do have 9 more days to vote, and then the All-Star Game starters and reserves will be announced probably a few weeks after that because they have to tally everything up, and they obviously reveal them at a set time. So we'll have to wait and see and update you, but Zaza Pechulia, second in the front court Western Conference vote getters. Just absolutely blows my mind. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we'll talk some quick stories within basketball as well as football right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the Cleveland Cavaliers are just about finalizing a deal to bring in spot shooter from the Atlanta Hawks, Kyle Korver, who has literally played for, I think, every single team in the NBA and has been around forever. This guy has just been around forever. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are finalizing a deal that would send a first-round draft pick in 2019, which, got to mention, if LeBron is still in Cleveland in 2019...
Doesn't matter.
The first-round draft pick is literally a pick in the 30s.
Yeah.
So not that big of a deal because we've seen some instances where second-round picks, late first-round picks turn out to be studs.
Sure.
Draymond Green, second-round pick. Manu Ginobili, second-round pick. Isaiah
Michael
Thomas
Redd,
of Boston was literally the last pick of the draft when he came out. So there is instances, but with the exception of maybe a top 10 pick, you're not even a starter.
Sure.
So what's the number 30 pick for a guy like Kyle Korver who literally fits what Cleveland want to do perfectly? LeBron is going to penetrate, Kyrie is going to penetrate, and Kyle Korver is simply going to be Ray Allen and stand to the three-point line and just become wide open because every defender is going to have to go into the paint to stop LeBron or Kyrie penetrating. They're going to kick out to Kyle Korver, who's wide open, and is going to knock down an open three. This is an absolute perfect move, and they're giving up, in my eyes, literally nothing.
You're basically taking Mike Dunleavy, who they got this year because they wanted to basically have him for that role, and you're trading him for Kyle Korver, right? Mike Dunleavy's a little bit older. He's a little worse than Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver is probably the best spot-up shooter in the game. Maybe Kevin Love, but Kevin Love does a lot of other things. But as far as just like total like spot up and shoot, I mean, we saw what he did, a couple of years back, in Atlanta in 2015 where he was an all-star, almost shot 50% from three. And even this year he's shooting basically 41% from three. I mean, he's the perfect guy right now with J.R. Smith sidelined for a little bit, because we've seen recently with J.R. Smith, he's been the guy that's basically, he'll go 3 of 6 from the field, but all 6 of those shots are 3-pointers. So now you get Kyle Korver to basically help J.R. Smith out with that. Then once he gets back, then you kind of have both of them doing it, and it's just one of those moves that the Warriors are trying to, or not the Warriors, the Cavaliers are trying to match what the Warriors are doing with just have talent everywhere. So we basically have that third time in a row finals rematch of the Cavaliers versus the Warriors.
Yeah, to me, this is a fantastic move. I think Korver is exactly what the Cavaliers need. He's literally going to be Ray Allen, stand out there, just wait for the paint to sort of collapse, kick out for a wide open 3 and knock him down and average 12 points a game and hit 4 of 7 from 3. I mean, it's a perfect move. In other news, in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills obviously making a lot of changes, just got rid of their head coach in Rex Ryan. Maybe Anthony Lynn, who took over in their last game, might be the head coach. He's being interviewed by the Chargers as well, so there is some sort of differences about who could be their next head coach. But one thing is that reports are they will be having a new quarterback because the organization will be moving on without Tyrod Taylor. This is being reported by multiple people within ESPN that the Buffalo Bills are not expected to keep Tyrod Taylor and his contract, which would include almost $31 million in guaranteed money. Reports are that if he's healthy, which it seems like he should be because they sat him out the last game to keep him healthy, that they are going to be releasing him and moving on without Taylor, who had a decent year this year, 17 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. He also adds some elements on the ground game, about 500 yards and 8 scores. So not a bad player, but they're moving on without him. Good move or bad move?
Well, see, the one thing that confuses me about this with Tyrod Taylor is, like, I saw reports, I think it was yesterday, that per his Snapchat, people were reporting that he was having hernia surgery, right? So if he has that, he's not going to be healthy by, I think it's like March 11th, by the time they have to basically figure everything out and pay him his money. And I'm thinking the reason he probably had that surgery was because he wants that $31 million, like we all would want. And so if he didn't have the surgery, then yeah, they're going to go on from him. And I get it. You have a new coach. You probably have a new philosophy coming in. You're not going to be as, run dominant as Rex Ryan, was. But I want to see what happens with Tyrod Taylor, because if he actually is having surgery, then all the stuff about them releasing him kind of goes out the door, and they're owing him that money for better or for worse.
We'll have to see what happens. 6 weeks recovery, if all his sort of surgery and everything can recover in time, but I'll have to wait and see. But moving on without him, let's say, for instance, everything's good and they release him.
Okay.
I don't really understand where they're going from here. For me, personally, Tyrod Taylor's not a franchise guy.
Right.
He's a decent guy, a game manager at best. I'd say at best he's a poor man's Alex Smith.
Sure.
Which is not terrible.
Which is a poor man's like Aaron Rodgers, which is
not terrible, but to me it's not Super Bowl worthy.
No.
And in the day of football right now, you have to have a franchise guy for the most part, unless you have literally a historic defense.
Sure.
You have to have a franchise guy to win a Super Bowl. So for me, Tyrod Taylor's not that guy, so I understand releasing him. But from here, I don't know where you go, because we saw E.J. Manuel, since he's been drafted from Florida State. He has come out as a bust. He played the last game of the year last couple of weeks,
right,
and was absolutely terrible. For me, the guys coming out of college, whether it be Trubisky from North Carolina or Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Kaiser, for me, none of those guys are really franchise quarterbacks, so I don't really know where you go from there. And as far as free agents go, if you're a free agent quarterback, it's because the team that originally has you doesn't have any faith in you. So I don't really know where you go from here. I think Taylor's their best option, but $31 million is a lot of money.
That's the thing. It's a $31 million, because you can take out the $31 million, and if you take a quarterback for, you don't have to take Romo, because Romo's the prized possession if he does become available. If you get a quarterback, especially like a rookie quarterback, like I understand you might not think Kaiser or anybody of them are franchise quarterbacks, but let's say you get them for like $5 to $10 million. That leaves $20 million, $25 million to spend on everything else, which you can get a lot for that. And, the only way you would give $31 million to a quarterback is if it's, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, someone like that. And like you said, he's a poor man, Alex Smith, which Alex Smith is a poor man's, call it like Aaron Rodgers or whatever, Eli Manning, whatever. So I get, at least financially, where they're just like, yeah, we don't want to invest all our money in that guy because it's not going to return the same amount that we would hope it would do.
I get it. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Obviously, by March 11th, everything will be sorted out, and we'll have to talk about it. And then the last bit of news, Minnesota has hired a new football coach. It will be P.J. Fleck. He was the coach of Western Michigan as recent as Monday. Led them to a 13-1 season this year with their lone loss coming in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic to Minnesota. I'm sorry, not to Minnesota. He's going to Minnesota. He had lost to Wisconsin in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. So he was undefeated before then. 3 years ago he took over and they had 1 win, and now he's got 13 wins under his belt this season. A young, energetic guy. He's been seen doing things like push-ups on the sidelines.
Right.
One of those guys that the players want to sort of play for. So now he's moving on, obviously, a step in class into the Big Ten in Minnesota, which is not really known for its football, but maybe he can turn them around. It's a good move for Fleck, and I'm happy he's there.
Well, we talked about it yesterday, Jeremiah, and it did on the football podcast with Fleck, or not with Fleck, but with Minnesota specifically, how they're in a conference, in a part of the conference where you don't have to go against Penn State. You don't have to go against Michigan. You don't have to go against Ohio State. The only teams you really have to go against are Wisconsin and Nebraska and Iowa if they're doing better. So the place they have to do, like all you really have to do is beat one of those big teams. If you can win your side of the conference, then you can all of a sudden make it, if you win that one game, like I said, against Penn State or Ohio State or whoever, then all of a sudden you're in the potential to be in that playoff format. And we saw this year with Minnesota, they actually were a really good team. I think it was like 9-3 or 9-4, and they won their bowl game. The one problem that he's coming into is you heard reports basically because the whole thing that happened with Clay's over in Minnesota was he backed his players basically wanting to boycott the game for, defending the players that got accused of, as I believe it was sexual assault. And that's became really murky and kind of weird. And Clay's ended up getting released for that. But you saw the players that were all around there basically saying, we don't like how this administration is being run, and basically threatening to leave the school. And it's not as easy for the players to leave the school as it is for a coach, because Fleck, he's going to go straight from Western Michigan to Minnesota and be the coach, from day one. If you're a player that does that, unless you go to junior college, you have to sit out a year. If you go from Minnesota to, say, USC or to Miami or wherever, you have to sit out a year. So, it's going to be interesting to see him go in there and try and smooth everything out.
Minnesota did fire Tracy Claeys on Tuesday, as you mentioned. A little bit of turmoil there, but obviously the school is going in another way.
Right.
With Fleck now, they also interviewed Les Miles, former LSU coach, who has won a national title before. So it shows what the school really has in mind when it looks at Fleck, that he's really the future and really a better option than Les Miles. So it really sort of speaks a lot to what the school thinks of Fleck. But obviously a good move for him. Happy for him. Hopefully he can turn Minnesota around. Maybe use that as a stepping stone to go into an elite coaching job if everything works out. Kind of like a younger Jim Harbaugh did.
Yeah, I mean, he's 36 years old.
He was at San Diego State, then he went to Stanford and turned them around. I'm sorry, he was at San Jose State. Then he went to Stanford and turned them around. Then we saw what he did in the NFL with the Niners. So I'll have to see what he can do.
Yeah. No, and like I said, Fleck's 36 years old. Like, he basically got to Western Michigan, made them, kind of this, year's Boise State, got them, unless there was going to be total chaos, like, a couple of teams away from, being a top 10 school, and, did basically all he could do there. And now he's going to go to Minnesota and he's going to try and get into the playoffs. The college football playoff, I should say. Yeah,
we'll have to see what happens. Big Ten is definitely probably one of the best conferences this year, but they haven't really had the bowl success that everyone thought they might have. But anyways, have to see how PJ Fleck can do. That's going to end our show for today, leading you into the weekend. I will be back on Monday talking about these 4 playoff games, all other news in the world of sports, as well as previewing the national title game between Alabama and Clemson in the football landscape. So unfortunately, Anthony, you'll not be there, but give me your pick real quickly.
I got to go with Alabama. I mean, Alabama's too good. They, we've seen them over the last basically decade being the best team in college football, and even though they basically had the thing with Lane Kiffin where they basically fired him before the championship game, I think the team itself, that defense is going to have about 3 people in the first round. I got to go with Alabama to win the game.
Okay, I will save my prediction for Monday, obviously, because I'll have to preview the game, and then you will recap it, and you and I will recap it on Wednesday.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that. But anyways, that will lead us into the weekend. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And we will be back on Monday right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Have a good weekend, and I hope you enjoy your sports.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.